The sun dipped low behind the hills, setting the prairie aglow in amber and rust. From the front porch of my ranch house, I watched the herd move slowly through the open pasture, their shadows long against the golden grass. The creak of the rocking, the chair beneath me, and the quiet clink of ice in my glass of sweet tea were the only sounds in the world. Until the mailbox slammed shut. I looked up. The mailman didn't wave like he usually did. Instead, he pulled away faster than normal, tires crunching hurriedly down the gravel path. Curious, I walked over and opened the box. A single envelope sat inside, thick, official-looking, stamped with a seal I didn't recognize. Clearwater Estates Homeowners Association Journal Action Required. He frowned. My ranch, Mallory Range, sat on the outskirts of Clearwater County, far from the gates and manicured laws of that pretentious HOA. Their land didn't touch mine, at least, not until now. Inside, the letter was thick with legal jargon and veiled threats. Greater than dear property occupant. You are in violation of HOA ordinances 1 for B and 2 to C. Unauthorized fencing, unapproved livestock, and operating a non-conforming residential structure. Immediate compliance is required. Failure to address these issues within 72 hours will result in formal complaints being filed and law enforcement contacted. Sincerely, Karen Winslow, President, Clearwater Estates HOA. I stared at it for a moment, dumbfounded. They were trying to evict me from my own land. After a decade on this property, after building every inch of this place with my own hands, someone named Karen Winslow thought she could toss me out because my barn didn't match her neighborhood aesthetic. I walked back inside, sat at my desk, and picked up the phone. The number on the letter rang twice before a voice answered, clipped, curt. Clearwater Estates HOA. This is Karen. I didn't waste time. This is Elijah Mallory. I just received a letter from your office claiming I'm in violation of your HOA bylaws. There must be a mistake. A pause. Then a cool, almost smug tone. Ah, Mr. Mallory, you're the one with the horses and that shed-looking home. That shed-looking home is a fully permitted ranch cabin built to code, and I'm not part of your HOA. Karen didn't miss a beat. We've recently expanded the Clearwater perimeter. The board voted unanimously to annex the surrounding lots to protect property values. You're well within the new boundary. I laughed. You can't just redraw lines and claim land that isn't yours. Actually, with county zoning adjustments and cooperative developers, we have the authority to enforce standards on adjacent plots. It's all in the updated charter. You're lowering community appeal. I took a slow breath, steadying myself. Let me make this clear. I'm not subject to your HOA. I didn't sign anything. I don't use your amenities, and I don't answer to you. You'll need to vacate, she replied coolly, until the violations are corrected and your application for compliance is approved. Not happening. Then we'll involve the police. There was something in her voice, entitlement, mixed with a threat, that made my skin crawl. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a deliberate attempt to bully me off land I legally owned. She didn't know who she was dealing with. Not yet. Good luck with that, I said, and hung up. I stood at the window, the letter still clenched in my fist. Outside, the fields rolled on as they always had, and changed, unbothered by the bureaucratic games of people like Karen Winslow. But a line had been drawn. Not in ink or on paper, but in principle. This wasn't just about fences or livestock. It was about power, about someone who thought their neighborhood covenants gave them dominion over a man's home, his livelihood, his legacy. I wasn't going to back down. I'd built this ranch from nothing. I'd defended it against storms, drought, wild coyotes, and once, even a wildfire that nearly swallowed the northern fence line. A woman with a clipboard and a smug voice wasn't going to be the one to take it from me. Not today. Not ever. I poured the rest of my tea into the sink, grabbed my deed from the safe, and laid it beside the letter. One represented years of sweat, grit, and pride. The other, a declaration of war. 3 days later, the piece shattered like glass. It started with a low rumble down my private road. I looked up from fixing a loose hinge on the barn door to see a sheriff's cruiser crawling toward the ranch house, followed closely by a shiny, black SUV with tinted windows. Dust kicked up behind them in angry spirals. I wiped my hands on my jeans and walked to the edge of the driveway. 2 young deputies stepped out of the cruiser, crisp in their uniforms but unsure in their posture. From the SUV, Karen Winslow emerged like a storm cloud, heels stabbing into the gravel, lips pursed, clipboard in hand. She didn't offer a greeting, just strode forward like she owned the land beneath her. Mr. Mallory, one deputy began, glancing down at his notepad. We've been dispatched in response to a formal complaint by the Clearwater Estates HOA. They claim you're occupying land within their jurisdiction, in violation of several community regulations. Karen stepped forward. He's been uncooperative. We've given written notice. We're asking you to escort him off the premises until he complies with the community codebook. I didn't move, just looked between them. And what authority does an HOA have to evict someone from land they never sold, never built, and never managed? Karen bristled. The board voted unanimously. The developer handed over community management rights. Our revised perimeter places this property inside Clearwater Estates jurisdiction. Let me stop you right there, I said. You don't own this land. You don't manage this land. And you sure as hell don't have authority over it. This ranch was deeded to me 10 years ago, county recorded, mapped, and zoned independently. Karen looked to the deputies, exasperated. He's being deliberately difficult. He's disrupting the neighborhood harmony. We have laws. He's choosing to ignore them. I pulled out my wallet slowly, opened it, and held up my ID, not my driver's license, the other one. The one with the gold seal and weighty letters that always made people pause. Elijah Mallory, Chief Judge, Clearwater County Superior COU. Or to both deputies stiffened. Their eyes widened as they glanced between me and the card. Karen's mouth fell open for the first time. You're a judge. I don't just know the law, Ms. Winslow. I interpret it. I've presided over land disputes, civil suits, and zoning battles across this county for over a decade. I've approved the very maps your HOA bases its claims on. Karen blinked, suddenly pale. This doesn't concern your position. Everything about this concerns it. You've trespassed on private land, filed a false complaint, and now you're trying to weaponize law enforcement to do your bidding. The lead deputy cleared his throat. Ma'am, he said carefully, turning to Karen. It appears Judge Mallory's property isn't within your HOA's legal bounds. We'll need to step back and review the maps and zoning laws before we can act further. Karen's eyes darted to her clipboard. No, you don't understand. He has animals roaming free. There's a giant metal barn. It's ruining the aesthetic. We have rules, and they don't apply to me, I said, calm but firm. Your HOA ends where my fence begins. Karen looked like she might combust. I will take this to court, she snapped. You're welcome to try, I said, stepping closer. But if you do, I'll not only file a countersuit for harassment, but I'll also ensure your HOA is investigated for attempted unlawful annexation. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. Her face was the color of unbaked dough. Deputies, I said, thank you for responding. If Ms. Winslow would kindly remove herself from my land, we can all avoid wasting more county time. Without another word, Karen spun on her heels crunching across the gravel as she climbed back into her luxury SUV and slammed the door. The engine revved, and the vehicle peeled out with more dust than grace. The deputies gave me a respectful nod before returning to their cruiser. I stood still, hands at my hips, until the road was quiet again. Only then did I smile. Karen had drawn first blood. She thought she could bulldoze her way through with rules and paper threats. But now she knew the truth. She hadn't picked a fight with some recluse rancher. She'd just declared war on the county's chief judge. I should have known Karen wouldn't back down 3 days after her public embarrassment on my driveway. The retaliation began petty, persistent, and calculated. It started with the mail, or rather the lack of it. My usual carrier, Mike, didn't show when I called the post office. They said delivery had been rerouted due to neighborhood complaints. Complaints from whom? They wouldn't say. Then came the barricade. One morning I found my main access road blocked by a fresh mound of gravel dumped squarely across the entrance. A metal sign had been hammered into the pile. Private ACCESS Clearwater Estates Residence ONLY beneath that, in smaller letters, greater than all violators subject to towing and citation. I nearly laughed. Clearwater Estates had no legal jurisdiction over that road. It ran straight through county land and had been maintained by the county long before the HOA even existed. Still, I had to pay out of pocket to get a bulldozer out there to clear it. It didn't stop there. I started noticing strangers loitering at the edge of my property, middle-aged men with clipboards and reflective vests, snapping photos of my fencing, barn, and livestock from the road. They never crossed the line, but they hovered just close enough to feel like vultures circling. Each time I walked out to the fence and waved, most turned and left. One of them smirked and said, "You'll be HOA compliant one way or another." And I sat at my desk and pulled open the county property records database. I cross-checked every plat map, zoning file, and deed linked to Clearwater Estates. My land sat on an island of its own, legally, historically, indisputably separate. But facts didn't stop people like Karen. She was playing a different game: public pressure, bureaucratic smothering, and death by 1,000 cuts. Fine, she wanted a fight. I'd bring one. The next morning I called in a professional surveyor licensed by the state, neutral and thorough. Within days he confirmed what I already knew. My ranch's boundaries had not changed, and the HOA's revised perimeter was based on a proposed annexation that had never been approved at the county level. I filed an official land encroachment complaint with the county clerk. I also submitted a detailed cease-and-desist letter, this time notarized and delivered via certified mail to the HOA's office and directly to Karen Winslow's personal address. But I wasn't done that weekend. I invited Channel 7 News to my ranch. The reporter, sharp woman named Ava Cruz, asked if the rumors were true. "Is it accurate that you, as a sitting county judge, are being harassed by an HOA?" I nodded. "This isn't about me," I said, standing in front of my barn as the sun lit up the hills behind me. This is about an unelected board of neighbors trying to rewrite property boundaries and bully lawful residents into submission. They tried it with me because they thought I wouldn't fight back, because they didn't know who I was. Who are you? She asked. I'm someone who took an oath to uphold the law, I replied, even when it lands on my own front porch. The segment aired Sunday night. By Monday morning it had gone viral. My office phone rang off the hook calls from concerned citizens, other ranchers, and even a couple of Clearwater Estates residents who were quietly ashamed of their board president. Karen, however, remained silent. No more letters, no more gravel piles, no more phantom inspectors. But I knew her type. The kind who doesn't vanish just She'd gone underground, regrouping. And that meant she wasn't done. I sat on the porch that evening watching storm clouds roll in over the horizon. Thunder cracked faintly in the distance, echoing across the wide open fields. My horses shifted uneasily in the paddock, sensitive to the change in the air. I sipped my tea and leaned back, letting the chair rock slowly. A storm was coming, all right, and this time, I'd be ready. 2 weeks later, the courthouse was packed. Clearwater County wasn't known for drama, but word had spread fast an HOA trying to evict the county's chief judge from his own land. Even the bailiffs looked curious as they ushered in reporters, residents, and more than a few smug-looking HOA board members. Karen Winslow entered like she owned the place. Clad in a sharp navy blazer and pearl necklace, she walked with an air of smug inevitability. Her attorney, a corporate type from the city, trailed behind her, flipping through notes with a stiff jaw. I sat in the gallery, no robe, no gavel, no authority in that room today. I'd officially recused myself. The judge presiding was Miriam Holt, a sharp, principled jurist I'd mentored years ago. She gave me a brief nod before bringing the court to order. Karen's attorney launched into his argument. First, Clearwater Estates had every right to revise its boundaries, that the HOA, with its majority vote, had extended community jurisdiction to include non-compliant properties adjacent to the estate. He painted me as a rogue resident, resisting community cohesion and harming property values. Then came my attorney, an old friend named Reuben King, who'd been trying cases since the day faxes were cut. He stood slowly, letting silence settle over the room. Your Honor, he began, voice calm and firm. The Clearwater Estates HOA did not purchase Judge Mallory's land. They did not build upon it. They did not zone it. They have no claim over it. And they cannot legally or ethically withdraw property lines with the stroke of a pen and expect law enforcement to act on their fantasies. He walked toward the bench, dropping a thick binder on the table with a heavy thunk. Certified land surveys, historical deeds, county zoning maps. Every piece of documentation confirms this property is not and never was part of Clearwater Estates. Judge Holt flipped through the documents carefully. Then Reuben delivered the final blow. We also have email correspondence from within the HOA board, he said, lifting another stack of papers. Specifically, from Ms. Winslow herself, discussing strategies to pressure the judge off his land before he becomes a problem. These emails prove not only intent to harass but coordinated abuse of authority and misuse of public resources. Karen's face tightened like a knot. The color drained from her cheeks as the courtroom murmured. The judge called a recess, reviewing everything in chambers. When she returned 30 minutes later, her decision came swiftly and without a flicker of doubt. Clearwater Estates HOA acted outside its legal jurisdiction, Judge Holt said, voice ringing clearly through the courtroom. This court finds that Mr. Mallory's land is not and has never been subject to HOA authority. Furthermore, this court finds the HOA's conduct to be retaliatory and coercive. Karen leaned forward as if she could stop the verdict mid-air. The HOA is hereby issued a cease and desist order concerning any further attempts to claim or regulate Mr. Mallory's property. In addition, damages in the amount of $75,000 are awarded to Mr. Mallory for harassment, obstruction, and attempted unlawful annexation. A hush fell over the room, followed by a single, audible gasp. Karen blinked, stunned. Her lawyer sank into his chair. One of the HOA board members quietly slipped out the side door. I stood, buttoned my jacket, and nodded once toward the bench in respect. Then I turned, walking past Karen without a word. She didn't look at me, just stared forward, jaw clenched, caught in the wreckage of her own ambition. Outside the courthouse, a small crowd had gathered. Microphones angled toward me. Cameras clicked. I raised one hand. This was never about fences or bylaws, I said. It was about power and the misuse of it. Property rights matter. The rule of law matters. And no group, no matter how loud, gets to rewrite reality to suit their preferences. As I returned to my ranch that evening, the sunset broke through, the clouds like fire across the hills. My horses grazed undisturbed. The mailbox stood unbothered, and not a single gravel pile blocked my road. The land was quiet again, mine again. Karen Winslow was removed from her position as HOA president. 2 days later, word was, half the board resigned shortly after their next election, held under strict oversight from the county. Sometimes justice doesn't need to shout, sometimes it walks steady, speaks plainly, and lands with the quiet force of a gavel. Sometimes, the best revenge is just going home unchallenged, unbothered, and undefeated.